Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Brent Bowers and this is My Money. Now, undoubtedly you've heard the phrase stimulus check well more than you need to over the last year, and for good reason. It's been the buzzing topic given the current climate. So most of the questions relating to this stimulus check is how much and when, and I'm definitely that way myself. I don't play either, but more importantly is why, and do they actually work? Well, we're gonna find out right about now. So what exactly is stimulus money? We've been hearing quite a lot about it recently.
Stimulus package.
Stimulus money.
Stimulus checks.
Stimulus payment.
Stimulus checks.
Stimulus check.
Stimulus check.
Well, lucky for us, the answer is directly in the name. You see, stimulus money is basically just a lump sum of cash used to stimulate the economy, and that's done in several different ways. Number one, direct capital payments, like the checks we've been getting, tax breaks, various public work projects, and other events that help promote consumer spending and economic stability. Easy enough. The whole stimulus concept has been, unfortunately, on the forefront of a lot of news media outlets, a lot of social media, and I say unfortunately for good reason, because usually a stimulus payout or governmental intervention of this caliber is usually preceded by a large negative event. Case in point, our best friend, COVID-19. Now, 2020 isn't the only year Americans have seen a consumer spending. As it turns out, there are several examples in the past of America receiving stimulus payments. As a matter of fact, there are several articles, papers, written research papers about the comparable differences between this year's economic payout and, of course, the economic payout in 2008 and 2009. Just for some context, because I know you're going to ask me for it, the 2008 economic relief package was in essence just a response to the 2008 housing crisis. However, it is very important to note that economic stimulus packages don't necessarily always mean cutting a check to the American people. In fact, in 2008, Congress actually passed a law that will allow for tax amendments, decreasing tax liability, rebates, and lessening the tax code. This of course includes targeted governmental spending in hopes that personal and private small businesses would promote consumer spending. Total cost, $152 billion. In 2009, the end goal was just the same, just in different packaging. It was basically just a roided up version of the 2008 economic package. Total cost, $831 billion. This, of course, covered everything from home buyer credit, college credit, rent relief, education, extensions, unemployment credit, and of course, healthcare. And if you even compare these to what's happening now, the 2020 CARES Act, which totals a whopping, back-breaking, 2020 is the worst year ever, $2.2 trillion, which is the largest economic relief in US history. This time around, the economic relief includes the obvious direct capital injection, but comes with a dozen areas of support, such as rent relief, small business relief, unemployment insurance, healthcare, public safety, private and local governments, and a flurry of other things that encapsulate the CARES Act. But the main question still stands: does stimulus work? And I'm sorry for not making my point earlier. My videos need to be a certain length of time on YouTube. Does stimulus work? And I'm talking about direct capital payments to the average American consumer. My personal answer to that is it depends. Firstly, you need to understand two things. Number one, what is a healthy economy? And number two, what promotes the healthy economy the best? A lot of people might suggest that a healthy economy is one that is productive. The process of producing goods and services through private enterprise who then go to the marketplace to sell said goods and services that are purchased by the average American consumer through their discretionary income that they have after the liabilities are paid. So what then drives the American economy the best? You might have guessed it, although you might not have. We have our best leading economic indicator taking up 70% of the nation's GDP. We have consumer spending. That's right, America and its consumption account for almost 70% of the nation's GDP, and the numbers just don't lie. So that means the $2.2 trillion is going to the American taxpayers and consumers, right? Right? Not really. It's actually, payment structure looks a bit like this, and it's designed to be spread across a lot of different sectors to promote a healthy recovery. But the question still stands, will this stimulus actually work? According to several researchers and historical documents, there has been a significant contribution to spending directly because of a stimulus package, especially when you account for certain sectors. You see, large businesses and large governmental entities aren't really as much of a risk as, let's say, somebody living paycheck to paycheck, the sick, the unemployed, or somebody running a small business where cash in hand is very, very important. It seems to me that a capital injection of a substantial amount, let's say $5,000, would go a lot longer way. Income instability, unemployment, closures, foreclosures, defaults, and so on and so forth. So when the whole $600 COVID thing passed, it was kind of an insult, like a slap in the face in terms of spending standards. After all, $600 to everybody in the United States isn't a big deal whatsoever. That comes out to about $196 billion. Even if you included the other $1,200 we received earlier, that comes out to $398 billion, which comes to a grand total of $594 billion. So where exactly is the other $1.4 trillion going? This, of course, ties into the economic point I was making earlier. People on average are more than likely going to spend when they have a surplus of discretionary income, rather than when they have a decrease. And this is what a lot of people are going through right now. The point I kind of want to drive home is people aren't going to see that $600 as extra income. They're going to mainly spend it for food, rent, debt, and transportation, since those are the largest spending sectors from the average American consumer. Small businesses, the sick, the unemployed, they're not going to see that $600 as a surplus income to spend and splurge on. It's going to be defensive in nature. There are surprisingly very, very, very few articles out there currently that actually have enough research on post-economic stimulus during a big recession. There was an article research paper by a professor in finance named Jonathan Parker from Northwestern University, which essentially just analyzing the spending events post-2008 housing crisis after the stimulus was paid out. The paper, I don't want to bore you with the whole entire paper, but the paper concluded that it did help maintain consumer spending, but on average, about half of the checks were spent. However, it is important to know in the way that stimulus spending, stimulus check, does little in the way of navigating away from a big pending recession. I say this specifically because when reading up on a more recent article from the United States Census Bureau, they had their own research and where they concluded that spending from a stimulus money is going to be in a defensive manner, meaning the average American consumer are basically just going to spend it on, like I said earlier, rent, transportation, food, and debt. One of the big contentions I have during all this spending is if consumer spending accounts for 70% of the nation's GDP, shouldn't all efforts be granted to the sector that promotes economic stability and recovery the best? It's definitely something to think about. So after ranting and raving for several weeks while writing the script for this video, I've come to the conclusion after doing a lot more research that direct stimulus cannot be given to consumers in its entirety, mainly because, historically speaking, economic packages are called packages because they not only give, because of their objective aims is to help people with monetary aid and support, but are basically targeted over a large area of the economy to boost it from that perspective, not just from the consumers. So that's something that I did learn. Case in point, especially in areas that are critical. The airlines, for example, were awarded $58 billion from this payout. And it's not really their fault because they're just a victim of this COVID-19 BS. The whole black swan thing, unnatural disaster, isn't their fault. They weren't necessarily promoting bad business practices. They didn't have a bad service or a bad product. They just had to go with the flow, and eventually they were victims of it. So naturally, it's going to be rightfully part of our responsibility to right that, especially since the air traffic decreases significantly since the beginning of March. And this was probably a good idea, seeing as though modern day air travel is a critical component of the economy and of course the service sector. Another example that we have are small businesses. They've either had to shut down completely or to maintain their operation within COVID guidelines. they pretty much struggled the most out of, I think, everybody except for the unemployed and the sick. So, I mean, how are they supposed to produce a product or service within the COVID guidelines when they can't get people in their location? So it makes sense that they would be a part of the small business section of this 2.2 trillion CARES Act. As it turns out, when I was doing a little bit of research, the whole point for a stimulus package is to assist in the economic recovery, not to create an economic recovery. In that regard, stimulus spending does in fact work, but it's pretty much akin to putting a splint on a broken leg. It's there to help it for the time being. It's never meant to be a permanent thing. So in that regard, stimulus does in fact work, but the caveat there is stimulus is going to work for the time being. In the end, I'm certainly not advocating free money. That's not what I'm about, or the government borrowing more federal money, but I am pretty much interested in getting back all the taxes that I paid out over the years, because when it comes to spending in government, my opinion has been kind of cloudy, to put it very, very nicely. For me personally, it's just kind of hard to accept this $2.2 trillion spending bill as a good idea, especially when you do research and you come across articles like Virginia getting broadband access or something like that, or Harvard getting a payout, or foreign aid money. It's just kind of odd, and it makes me question what's going on. Okay, to be quite honest, I really don't know what's in store for us collectively as a society in 2021 when it comes to economics and finance. I hope it's a lot better than 2020. I really hope I do, but I just can't shake these feelings that something nefarious is going on. This stimulus package, the 2.2 trillion, is just basically like a smoke and mirrors, cloak and dagger kind of cover up for something more serious economically in the future. It kind of makes you think a little bit. But I don't want to go down any particular road just yet, and I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that for you guys to chew on, and that is all I have for you guys today. If you like what I had to say, go ahead and drop the like button. If you want to see more, consider subscribing. I am Brent Bowers, and this is My Money. See you guys later.